I looked at the DC universe, and by and large, the DCU books are set in cities and metropolises and stuff. And I thought, much like the real world, there's a whole lot of America in the DCU that is not that. And so we're exploring parts of the DCU we really haven't seen in books very often.
The main character in this book, Joe Chamberlain, is a guy who's really down in his luck, like a lot of people in his community. And he essentially, not to give too much away, but let's give people a reason to read the book, is he essentially makes a deal with a really bad hombre.
Yeah.
He will give him powers that'll help him help his community, but then he's going to do some really bad things.
Yes.
But I find it interesting that this book about supernatural horror has some really relevant themes that are resonating right now in present day.
In my lifetime, I've seen the town I went to high school in go from being a thriving, healthy town with jobs and employment to just hollowed out. The main street is empty. It's just empty storefronts. The elementary school that I went to is closed down. The 2 factories that were keeping the town alive are gone. And there was nothing there. And at that point, if you're still living in a place like that, you know, you witness this high-speed kind of hollowing out of a thing, but you also realize there is nothing there. And if you can't or don't want to leave, you're kind of trapped in this place. And there's a feeling that I don't think is wrong, that nobody cares. That if you're in a town that had a population of 800 people and you're in the middle of nowhere, like, nobody gives a crap about you. And I think that has contributed to our kind of current political situation, and is one of those things where, at the risk of getting too overtly political with it, like, I live in the middle of flat-out Trump country, and I could look out my door from my house and see Trump signs from people that I know to be good, decent people.
But who are feeling disenfranchised and abandoned by society as a whole.
They are, and so somebody came along and offered them something, a hope that something could be different. And it's to me, it was obvious that that hope was false. But when you're desperate enough, any hope will do, and you grabbed a hold of that. So Brimstone is that. Brimstone's taking that and making it an actual overt supernatural thing. If you're from this place that you have seen die, and it's not going to get any better, and you're poor, and you can't afford to move to a city, even if you had job skills to offer at a city, and you're trapped there, and you know you're trapped. And somebody comes along and says, I will make this great again. I will make this place healthy. I will make it vibrant. I will make you powerful. Like, it is real hard to say no. Even if everything about you knows you should say no. That desperation leads to poor decisions, and we see that all the time. And it's kind of this deal. I made the point last week that if you go 1 county over from me, there's a town. Because of the opioid epidemic, the town, 20,000 people, had 11 murders last year, which is 10 times the per capita average. And that's not counting the suicides and the ODs that have come on there. Like, that's a bad situation. And yes, those people are desperate and they're miserable. And in a very real way, they're not getting any help. Now, yes, they are voting against their own interests. They are, you know, not doing the things that, from an outside perspective, it looks like you should do. And Brimstone is a way of doing that while combining it with, you know, superheroes and horror.
How did you get DC on board for this book? Because a lot of times some publishers might shy away from that. And there are some very obvious comparisons to what's going on in today's political landscape with your book. Was it a hard sell?
No. As a matter of fact, they came to me and they basically knew my background. And of course, I've worked for DC for many years now. And they said that they didn't say it as overtly as that, but they wanted something that kind of dealt with those issues a bit. And I took the ball and ran with it and drawing from my real life, because it was something that I wanted to write about and wanted to do. If I hadn't done Brimstone, I probably would have done it as a creator-owned book, which actually probably would have been a harder sell. And so DC's been really supportive about that. And I've always wondered if maybe I, you know, should kind of pull back in interviews and in the book on that kind of stuff, the parable and the analogy that we're making. And no, they've been all for it. So to their credit, they're kind of taking a risk on the book, and I hope it pays off for all of us. Because you're dealing with the dark, creepy part of the DCU, are you going to be incorporating some of the other characters from DC that kind of fit in that world? Yeah. Like who? We will. Well, come on. I'm not gonna, Justin, I'm tempted to repeat the same jokes I made the other day because they were pretty funny. But we will almost certainly fairly soon, see John Constantine or Constantine, depending on which side of the ocean you're on. And Swamp Thing will probably come in, both because I love those characters and they are highly appropriate to what we were doing in the book. And that actually, it also goes into that idea of these forgotten, abandoned places, because when they meet Constantine, their thing is going to be like, where the heck were you when this was going on? Like, why are you here now when we needed you 2 months ago? And that's kind of their attitude too. They're aware that there are forces in the world that could help them, and they don't care. And that's how they perceive it, anyhow. You know what I mean? They don't think that Superman cares about them, and they don't think that Batman is interested in a little town. He's interested in Gotham. And so when we get those other characters, we get a little bit of that. What the hell, man? Like, we needed you, and you weren't there. Which I think is worth addressing in the context of a fictional universe that's meant to mirror our own.
Absolutely. You're obviously a fan of supernatural and horror. What were some of the books that influenced you, that made an impression on you when you were a young fan?
Oh, I got Alan Moore's Swamp Thing at far too young an age. I mean that seriously. Like, I am not a kids shouldn't read adult things kind of thing, but
kids shouldn't read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Kids should not read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It's the only work of fiction that ever gave me nightmares. And basically what had happened was I liked the Wes Craven Swamp Thing movie, which is fairly tame, when I was like 6 or 7 or whatever.
Tame is one way of putting it.
Yeah,
sure.
so when I was maybe 10, they released the Alan Moore graphic novel, or the trade collection of his run on Swamp Thing, and I read it, and it just freaked me out. Like, now I'm kind of grateful for it, because I think in a lot of ways my creative DNA kind of harkens back to having had that experience. But at the time, like, there was just nothing like it. There's this arc where Jason Woodrue, the Floronic Man, like, turns plants against the Thing, and people were just going crazy. And there's the bit where I think it's in that Swamp Thing run where, like, Matthew the Raven does his origin story, and he was a human, and he, like, vomited up his guts.
I'm like, yes.
Seriously.
Horrific.
Yeah, and just
that scared me as an adult.
Right? And just the themes of it are just that. Like, the idea that Alec Holland wasn't Alec Holland, he wasn't who he thought he was, that's an existential dread to put on a kid. Like, maybe I'm not me, you know? So, and I think you can see a lot of my horror kind of influence comes from specifically that run and things like that.
You're also doing another DC book with the boss, essentially.
I am.
Sideways with Dan Didio. How is that?
Actually,
it's got to be kind of weird.
It's going really well. It is. I will admit.
It's not a lie. Come on.
Well, no, there I admit. So what I'm mostly doing on the book is I'm plotting over. I'm dialoguing over Dan's plot, rather. So he will write a plot. Kenneth Rocafort will draw it, and then I'll come back and look at what Dan's plotted, and I'll do the character's dialogue over it. And that's fine. That's not awkward. But when Dan has different dialogue in mind than I do, like, I feel a little bit like, I don't think we should do this. And it's like, on one hand, he's my collaborator, so I should do that. On the other hand, he also has the power to fire me. I don't think he would, but you can't get that thought out of your head, right? You're like, well, you are my boss, too. So it's kind of a needle thread.
How long is that series going to run? Is that open-ended as well?
Yeah, it's open-ended, as is Curse of Brimstone. So as long as people are actually reading the books and stuff, we're going to keep doing them.
And you're also somebody who's made their rep with creator-owned books as well, for Image. Any other plans for more creator-owned work?
Oh, always. I've got, because I'm an idiot, 6 pitches in various stages of development. Like, 2 of them are ready to go. I will probably, when I get back home from Seattle, we'll probably pitch them the next following week. So, and then I gotta keep stuff in development like that. It keeps it fun for me. So.